I'm so excited today to be joined by Peggy Flanagan, the Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota, a Democratic candidate for Senate in Minnesota. Now, I want to jump right in and talk about who you are and your campaign. So, to those who don't know who Peggy Flanagan is and why you're running for Senate, tell us.
Sure. So I think this race is really a choice between a corporate Democrat and someone with progressive values who has fought for regular folks for my entire career. I grew up thinking that the bottom could fall out at any moment, and there are too many people who feel that way right now. And that's why I'm running, to make sure that working families, folks on the margins, have a voice in Washington, D.C., because I think it is time. It's also the reason that I'm not taking corporate PAC money, because I think corporations have a lot of power in Washington, and it's the rest of the folks who need it. And that's what this campaign is all about, helping people to be able to afford the lives that they want to live.
Well, that's something I do want to ask you about, the corporate PAC dollar side of things. But I want to ask you about the race first, because it's obviously a contested Democratic primary before you even get to the general election. So why should voters vote for you over, say, your Democratic opponents?
Sure. Well, I would say, I am someone who has run statewide twice before and won. I've got deep relationships all across the state of Minnesota, and I've delivered on things like paid family and medical leave, increasing the minimum wage and indexing it to inflation. And those are the kind of things that I want to do in Washington. I also think, being a fighter to make sure that people have access to healthcare is incredibly important. It's what I hear happening all across the state of Minnesota, that even before the big ugly bill, what we hear is that people have $15,000 deductibles. We hear that folks are paying $600 for a 5-minute medication check with their doctor. That's not right, and we can do better. We need a vision for healthcare for everybody, and that's what I'm going to be fighting for. And while it's not the reason that I'm running, I will be the first Native American woman to serve in the United States Senate, and frankly, it's overdue.
I want to talk to you about the corporate PAC pledge that you mentioned earlier in the interview. What does that mean to regular folks? Because corporate PAC could mean anything from APAC to big oil. What does it mean? And what does it mean when you say you're not taking a single corporate PAC dollar?
Sure. So what that means to me is that this campaign is fueled by real people. It's, truck drivers and nurses and teachers and little grandmas who are reaching into their coffee can, right, to donate $5. It's all about people versus corporations, big oil, big pharma, folks who, these companies who can write checks and influence elections. And, I think that folks see what's happening right now in Washington, and it's on both sides of the aisle, that it feels like our government is going to the biggest bidder. And I want to be beholden to Minnesotans. We've got over 45,000 donors across the country in all 87 counties here in Minnesota. And it also means that our average donation is $29.
Yeah.
And so that tells me that these are real people, voters. And I think that's what folks are looking for right now. I want to be beholden to voters, to Minnesotans, and not to big corporations who already have plenty of representation in Washington, D.C.
Well, something you mentioned earlier was that you want to be a fighter for Minnesotans. And right now, I think if you ask a lot of folks about how would you describe Senate Democrats, the word fighter isn't used often. So I guess what would you be doing differently in the United States Senate to get that fighting message across? Because right now, truthfully, you're going to be entering a United States Senate that, for all intents and purposes, will still have a Democratic minority.
Well, I think one of the things that I've done my entire life is fight for regular people, and that is why I think we've been able to get those good results with the things that people tell us that they need, not having to choose between taking care of a new baby, a sick loved one, and yourself, and a paycheck. Knowing that in Washington D.C. they haven't raised the minimum wage in over 16 years. It's $7.25. We were able to do it here and index it to inflation so that every January it goes up. Those are the kind of fights that we need to take on. And now listen, I have worked with folks on both sides of the aisle. When I ran the Children's Defense Fund, part of my job was to make sure that when Republicans were in the majority, that I found folks to author my bills. And I would say to people who said, well, geez, you're not going to Democrats to author these bills anymore. What's up with that? And I said, 2 years in the life of a child is a really long time. And so we need to make sure that we have healthy birth outcomes right now. And if we can find those folks, even if we disagree on everything else, to find that common ground, I'm going to work hard to do that. I'm a relationship builder. So there are certainly policy priorities that I'm going to get to work on as soon as I get there. But I also know that one of my superpowers is having cups of coffee with folks and finding that common ground. I'm a relationship builder, and I think that really matters. It really matters right now. But, my occupation might change, right? If I'm an executive director, if I'm a state rep, lieutenant governor, an organizer, an activist, but my vocation is the same, is making sure that people are seen, heard, valued, protected, and believed. And I'm also super clear that when I get to Washington, D.C., that I'm not going by myself. That our grassroots supporters across the state from all different walks of life, many communities, are going to be coming with me. And how we've been campaigning right now, which is holding kitchen table conversations across the state, which are less town hall and more community meeting, welcoming people as they are. We've got packed rooms. That should be the expectation for how I will also govern, staying deeply connected to the people that I represent to make sure that their voices are in Washington. And, I'm small, but I'm mighty, and I'm scrappy. And, that should be the expectation. My Ojibwe name, my Native American name, speaks in a loud and clear voice, woman. It is literally what I am required to do. And that's how I've led and how people can expect me to continue to lead.
I do want to ask you a couple rapid fire questions about kind of the state of the Senate and how you vote on certain issues that are before senators right now. So right now, we're obviously in a government shutdown impacting hundreds of thousands of federal workers across the country. But Democrats in the Senate are not voting for the Republican bill to reopen the government because of the Affordable Care Act issue. Its subsidies are expiring. You were in the Senate today. Would you hold the line with your fellow Senate Democrats and vote no on the bill?
Absolutely. That's the right thing to do. We're fighting for healthcare. And P.S., this is the floor. What's happening now? We need a vision for healthcare for all. I think, one of the things we hear about constantly is prior authorization and how some dude behind a desk at a health insurance company gets to decide whether or not you get life-saving healthcare prescribed by your doctor. That's not right. We have to get rid of that. We need a vision, I think, for healthcare for all, which is what I support, Medicare for all. But the first thing we have to do is get rid of prior authorization.
I also ask you, if you were in the Senate today and the Epstein Files discharge petition came across your desk, would you vote for it?
Yes. I mean, here's the deal. I am a mom of a 12-year-old girl. She will be 13 very soon. The Epstein Files, what this is all about, and I think sometimes what we lose sight of, these are young women and girls who are victims and survivors, right? And we need to do everything possible to stand with them and stand up for them. And I am heartened to see that there is some bipartisan support in this moment, and we should continue to push. This should not be something that's taken lightly. And, I'm going to bring that mama bear energy into this fight, and I hope that more people do too.
Final question for you. If you were in the Senate, would you vote to do away with the filibuster? That's a topic that's on a lot of people's minds, given the fact that can't have a simple majority to really get much done in the Senate right now. You need the 60 votes. Would you do away with the filibuster under a Democratic majority?
Under a Democratic majority, yes. I think right now it's one of the tools in our toolbox to make sure that we're protecting democracy. And my goodness, we have to use every tool in our toolbox that we have as Democrats right now.
Peggy Flanagan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much, Aaron.
Hey folks, Aaron Parnas here. Thank you so much for watching The Parnas Perspective. Please consider subscribing to support our work as we grow this independent news media entity into something that rivals mainstream every single day. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.